Section 9.3, I split it up into 2 different days to try to keep it a little bit more simple and separated. Day 1, we are solving quadratic equations. So we're actually going to find an answer to the question of the quadratic by graphing. We'll be finding x, but we're going to do the solving by graphing. Here's an example problem. X squared minus 2x minus 3. And we know how to solve equations if it didn't have a squared in it. We would know that if we had to solve this, you do the opposite. Since that's minus 3, you would add 3. Then you would divide by negative 2. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Not so much when you have an x squared. So there's 5 different ways to solve quadratic equations. We're only going to take one day today. And the way that we're going to do it and the day that we're going to do it is by graphing. So this is going to be put on a graph for you sometimes. Other times we'll graph it ourselves. There's what the graph looks like. If I asked what that parabola looked like, put it on graph paper, did all the t-chart and everything, there's our graph. It wants to know, when does this graph equal 0? When does that graph equal 0? Normally it says that equals y, or y equals x squared minus 2x minus 3. But instead of the y, it says, when does it equal 0? Well, here's your y-axis. When does y equal 0? Right here. When it's at this level. Where does that happen? At x equals negative 1. And also at x equals 3. At x equals negative 1, that equation will equal 0. At x equals 3, that equation will also equal 0. Don't believe me? Type it in on your calculator using parentheses. Parentheses, negative 1 squared minus 2, parentheses, negative 1 minus 3. Type all that in there, hit equals, and it says 0. If you can see with the glare. Do the same thing with the number 3. Type in a 3 squared minus 2 times 3 minus 3. Hit equals. There it is again. You get 0. So, how do we solve that? We graph it and we find the 2 spots where it crosses the x-axis. And because it's a parabola, most of the time, it's going to hit twice on the axis. Let's take this one, write it down, negative x squared plus 2x minus 1. They want to know where it equals 0, so pause it if you need to, and also draw this graph on your notes. Otherwise, if you don't have the graph, you won't know what to look back at. Every once in a while, you will not have 2 answers. Why don't you have 2 answers to this one? Because the graph goes up, 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 and right about when it's going to hit the x-axis, it goes back down right away. So in this particular case, when it hits exactly in one spot, you're only going to have one answer. What's that answer? Wherever it crosses. In this case, it happens to be 1. But that can happen a lot of times in a lot of different ways, and it doesn't have to be a reflected parabola. It could be right side up. You could go down, 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 hit, and go right back up. That would have an answer of x equals negative 2, because that's the one place that it hit. If it doesn't hit once, it's going to hit twice, 1, 2. But it could, every once in a while, only hit the line once, which means we only have one answer. But then we have this one, pause it and write it down. X squared minus 4x plus 7 equals 0. You graph it, and you go, wait a second. That graph is never going to hit 0. No matter what number I can possibly come up with for x, that's a real number, I will not have an answer because it has to hit the x-axis. No solution, which I'm okay with you abbreviating to no sol. No solution to that. It doesn't hit. So it's either you're going to have a parabola that either hits twice, 1, 2, or it hits once, or it hits not at all. You'll have 2 answers, 1 answer, or no answer. So now you are going to graph these to find out, but there's some good news. You're not graphing by hand. Go find this website, www.graphsketch.com. Plug it in. Graphsketch.com. when you plug it in and go to the website, it looks like this. It's going to graph for you. Over here it says f of x equals. Well, we haven't done functions or f of x since first semester, but all that means is that you're going to type this in as f of x equals, you're going to put all of this in, but not the equals 0, because you yourself are going to go find out where it equals 0. So let's type in x squared minus 6x plus 8, x squared minus 6x plus 8. You're thinking, how do I do x squared? Same as what we've been doing all year, that little mark above the 6. X squared minus 6x plus 8. If you're wondering, because you can't see that because it's tiny, x squared. Excuse me. That is the mark above the 6 on a keyboard. Minus 6x plus 8. You hit enter, and there's your graph. No, you don't have to draw it on paper. X squared minus 6x plus 8 looks just like this. What you have to find are the two spaces where it equals 0. So here's your x-axis. You go back to 0, and there's 1 at 2, 3, and again at 4. So your two answers for that are x equals 2 and 4. You can put a comma between, or you can write it twice. I'm okay with either, just comma or write it twice. But you have to have x equals. We have to know that it's x. All right, so there's one. Let's try another one. F of x equals x squared plus x plus 1. Type that in. X squared plus x plus 1. Try it yourself. Okay, you should type it in. Your graph looks like this. Notice I wanted a red graph this time instead of a blue graph, so I put it just on a different line. And you're looking for when does it equal 0. And here's your graph. Here's your x-axis. It's never going to make it. When does it equal 0? It never equals 0. No solution. Third one. How about x squared minus, oh boy, x squared minus 5x equals 6. It doesn't let us put an equal sign in the computer, and we can't have it equal 6. We have to have it equal 0. The only way that we can get this to equal 0 is if we minus 6 over here to the other side. We know this from algebra. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. Why would we do that? X squared minus 5x minus 6 equals 0, so that it looks just like a quadratic equation with a, b, and c, and it equals 0 at the end. So sometimes you're going to have to rearrange your equation a little bit. What does it look like now with x squared minus 5x minus 6? Type it into your website. There's your graph. It's kind of big, but it doesn't matter how big it is, because all we're looking for is the two places where it hits the x-axis. Where does it hit the x-axis? Left 1 space, -1, and right 5, 6 spaces. So at x equals -1 and 6 are your two answers. All right, let's finish. Last one. We've got negative x squared minus 9 equals negative 6x. Again, not okay. It has to equal 0. We can't solve any quadratics until they equal 0, so we're going to add 6x. And carefully over here, we're going to add it to the middle and put it in order. Negative x squared plus 6x minus 9 equals 0. Type it in. Let's see what we get. Last one. Long notes. But at least I'm not making you graph all these by hand. Negative x squared plus 6x minus 9. Let me clear all this ink out of here. It looks like it does hit the graph, but it only hits it once. Where is that one spot? 1, 2, 3. So our final answer is x equals 3. And there is only one answer for that. All right. So again, could have one answer. You could have no solution. You could have two answers. But make sure your equation always equals 0. Good luck with that.